Yeah, the word suspend is quite a particular thing in presidential campaigns. It has all kinds of legal connotations about the campaign finances that go behind it, the difference between suspend and end. But perhaps this campaign more than ever, suspend has a double meaning because, of course, Nikki Haley could also be, someone could argue that she's running for the role of understudy in case anything happens to Donald Trump. Of course, he's got multiple legal cases against him. And of course, he's not exactly a spring chicken as well, as though even though he likes to make those jabs at Joe Biden. So there is some kind of duplicity there going on there as well. But the interesting thing about that speech from Nikki Haley was, of course, the lack of endorsement. That was what everybody was listening out for. And in that speech, she said, "I have always been a conservative Republican and always supported the Republican nominee." She then quoted Margaret Thatcher, somebody who is somewhat of a hero for her. And she said, "Never just follow the crowd. Always make up your own mind. It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond. It is not for those who don't support him, and I hope he does that." Now, that is important because these voters that voted for Nikki Haley are going to be vital when it comes to that general election in November. We have already seen Donald Trump and Joe Biden vying for those candidates with a slightly contrasting message. Donald Trump came out as Nikki Haley was taken to that podium with a ferocious attack on her, saying Nikki Haley got trounced last night in record-setting fashion. Much of her money came from radical left Democrats, as did many of her voters, almost 50% according to the polls. I would like to further invite all of the Haley supporters to join the greatest movement in the history of our nation. A bit of a contrast to the gracious manner with which Nikki Haley congratulated Donald Trump, and also a contrast to what Joe Biden said in his statement. He said, "It takes a lot of courage to run for president. That's especially true in today's Republican Party, where so few dare to speak the truth about Donald Trump." Nikki Haley was willing to speak the truth. He then continued, "Donald Trump made it clear he doesn't want Nikki Haley's supporters. I want to be clear. There is a place for them in my campaign." That, of course, alluding to a former Truth Social post by Donald Trump, who said anybody who supported or donated to Nikki Haley is barred from his MAGA movement. But that 20 to 40% of Republicans who say they do not want Donald Trump in the White House is going to be very, very crucial in this election, as will the vote of people who simply don't show up because they just can't face the fact that Donald Trump will be vying against Joe Biden in that November election.
Fraser, here we are, first Wednesday in March, and with Nikki Haley's sign-off, the suspense is over until the nominating conventions. How does it feel in Washington today, a city that is home to so many politics junkies?
I will say, personally, this is my first time covering an American election from the ground, and regardless of what's happening, I'm still very excited to be able to do that and have the opportunity to do that. But when I speak to my colleagues, my other journalistic friends who work in the White House behind me and on the campaign trails as well, there is a bit of a sense of, well, what do we do now? They're kind of waiting for those Republican and Democratic conventions, which of course aren't happening until July and August. So it is a way off, and it's really quite rare in American history that the election, or at least the nomination process rather, is so sewn up so early on in the road. So the fact that we have the two candidates that we know are going to be at that final is quite surprising. However, it must be said, it doesn't feel like it's set in for quite a few of the voters that I've spoken to. I've spoken to people in South Carolina, New Hampshire, Iowa, and a lot of them are convinced that it will not be those two men when it gets to November, whether that's because of Donald Trump's age or his legal fees that are mounting up and his trials, or whether Joe Biden might not make the distance. Of course, there's a lot of questions about his age and his mental capacity as well. They are convinced that there will be some other candidates that will come along at the conventions in the summer, which will replace these two nominees, or at least one of them. It has to be said, as we stand here outside the White House right now, looking down the road to November, that simply doesn't look like it's going to happen. It looks like it's going to be a rematch of 2020.
All right, after Super Tuesday, ahead of next week's State of the Union address, there's the France 24 debate coming up in the next hour, and we'll be talking about what's happening in the United States. Fraser Jackson, many thanks for that live update from the White House. The U.S.